Okay, so...
We are recording.
Okay,
Just to be absolutely clear.
Have we got the same theme tune?
Yeah, it's the same theme tune as last time. It's
Okay, cool. Pal. Series 2.
Yeah, Series 2. We got around to it.
Who were we kidding that we thought we could just continue on?
Yep. Yeah, like we thought we were just going to roll straight out of one into the other one. Like summer would just be a quiet time for us.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't. How long ago was the last episode? It seemed like quite a while.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's like
Sean
a
Conway.
whole other season. Yeah, Sean
Well,
Conway.
we recorded Sean Conway ages before it was the last episode, so it seems like even longer.
Yeah.
But it's great to be back.
Yeah, it is. It is good to be back. Talking nonsense into a microphone again. I enjoyed this.
Been up to much?
Yeah. I mean, you've been busier than me. I feel like you don't have to introduce what I've been up to in the summer just to come around to what you've been up to since we last recorded.
I wasn't going to go down that route.
I feel like we should. You got quite a lot done.
I ran a bit.
You ran a fair bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I ran a bit with Kimball.
Yeah. Kimballtron,
whatever we're going to go with. Yeah, I ran with Kimball. It was a good laugh. Yeah, that hurt. And then I had a bit of time off and then started running again.
Yeah, doing some running. I feel like we've glossed over that a bit. What was it, John O'Groats to Land's End?
Yeah, 3 peaks
with
as well.
A couple of peaks in the middle. Yeah.
I did more mileage in the first week of that month than I did in the first 5 months of the year.
Wow.
It was a good laugh.
Yeah. It's too much.
And it was quite annoying, actually, spending that much time with someone that never hurts. Kimball is...
well, he's not human, is he? Yeah. We've established that.
I spent some of my time going, wow, look at these beautiful views. But most of the time was, oh my God, my legs! End this! So it was...
you had a good summer then.
Yeah, it was good.
All in all, yeah, great time.
And then we've released a new race.
Yeah.
Yay, we can talk about this now. 2 years I've been keeping that secret.
Yep. And here it is. Now we're out.
Just,
we can breathe this out of relief. We can talk about
We've come out.
We've
come out. So we've got the For Rangers race, which has just launching. And by the time people have listened to this episode, it has launched. And if they haven't seen it, where the heck you been?
Yeah.
You're screaming about it.
What are you even doing?
So it's a pretty cool concept. Have a look at the For Rangers race if you've not seen it already. It's
like, I know we would obviously big up our own races, but this one's just outrageous.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then we've now teed up for a Series 2 of the podcast, which is going to be epic. Some well good guests.
Yeah, and we've stretched the budget a bit this time, haven't we? There's you've invested in some new equipment.
I've invested 100% of our money.
Good. I believe you'll have made wise choices.
In a soundboard app.
Not new microphones or soundproofing gear.
It cost me £1.32p.
Yep, good.
And now we have any sound effect that we want at our disposal.
Okay.
So I thought that would be more important than mics.
You know what? Maybe you're right. Like, maybe we should have some examples.
And one of the features that we're going to run is we kind of contact our guests prior to introducing them, and we give them a choice of 3 sound effects titles, which they get to choose from. And they don't know what it sounds like. We don't play it to them. And they're just really at the mercy of the sound app.
Oh, so we have like a theme tune for our guest.
Kind of, yeah, and they pick it. So if it's awful, it's completely their fault.
Totally their own fault.
But I'm hoping that they pick a thing that lets us know who they are. In a quick 20-second soundbite.
So just to be clear, we're going to define our guest with this £1.32 soundboard app.
Yes.
Okay.
In my head, it sounds a lot better. So our first guest of the series, of Series 2.
And it's big.
It's a big guest. It's a big guest. Let's hope he picked the right sound effect. He went with sound effect trollololol.
Yeah.
And let's introduce our guest. It's Damian Hall. There we go.
There you go. Good afternoon, Damian. I can't fire you.
Thanks for the wonderful thing you did.
Yeah. I'm very grateful.
I'm very glad I made that investment.
Was that worth £1.32, Chris?
Yeah. Damien, you happy with your choice there?
Yes, I couldn't be happier.
It defines Damian, I feel, and all of his successes over the last couple of years. That's that. So, yes, our first guest of Series 2 is Damian Hall. We're under a desktop. That seems to be a theme as well. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I'm thinking of getting my ringtone on my phone changed to the Follow Levels thing, of course, so that I can hear that regularly.
I will
not
send
anyone ever phones me, but that'd be nice.
No, that's fine, Damien. If it's something you need me to do, I can edit that section out of the podcast and send it to you afterwards.
We can loop it for a 3-hour-long track that you can listen to on your longer runs.
That'd be wonderful, thank you.
So we haven't spoke much about you at all, really. So you may be known to some of our guests. I'm guessing that a lot of our guests know who you are.
I imagine they will.
If they are interested in running, because you've been quite a busy boy over the last couple of years. But for someone that is listening that doesn't know who Damian Hall is, who are you, Damian?
I'm having a midlife crisis. I'm 41, and it sort of makes me want to run long distances, I suppose. And I only really started running. I did my first half marathon in 2011, and then my first marathon and ultra marathon the next year. And I got sort of so blown away by it, so sort of addicted to it. You know, who doesn't want more pain in their life and more cakes? Last year, 4 years later, I was picked to represent Great Britain in the Trail World Championships. Now, don't ask me much about that because that went terribly, but there were some other good bits along the way, and that's probably a waffly enough summary for now.
So from 4 years, half marathon to wearing a GB vest at the age of, let me get this right, so you'd been late 30s when you started?
Yeah, late 30s, I can't remember exactly.
Wow.
So there's hope for me yet.
Yeah, so basically Damian came into the ultra run industry with a chair, like they do on wrestling, and just came out of nowhere and smacked someone. Yeah, came out of nowhere and took the running scene by storm, you can say. Let's use the word storm.
Yeah, we'll say that.
And you didn't really stop there. You've kind of been busy since that point as well, haven't you?
I suppose. I haven't raced so much this year. Something I learned from last year was I did an FKT early in the year. I ran the 630-mile Southwest Coast Path in May, trying to set a new FKT, and we did that, and that was pretty exciting. But it did leave me with some fatigue for the rest of the year, which probably affected my performance at the Trail World Championships in October. So I was lucky to have a little injury after that, and that gave me a break. So this year I've only really done 4 races, 3A races, and they've probably gone reasonably well, partly probably because I've had that break and not done any FKTs. So I'm already winding down. I'm already doing less races as old age or middle age kicks in.
But your most recent race, you had an absolute storm. I was following you, so well done on that.
We were both dot watching that weekend.
Yeah. So I'll let you tell the story of what you've just done. Actually.
Well, I guess my first obsession when I got into the sport was this. Well, it was probably doing a 100-miler, which I did for my third ultra, and then my fifth ultra I think was the spine race, which was my new obsession, and I did that 2 years in a row, and then I did UTMB for the first time in 2015, and that sort of became my new obsession, and I've done that 3 years in a row now, improving each time, and that's partly just. I'm sure some people listening to this will have done UTMB, and if you're not used to those long descents, it smashes your quads up pretty good. So that first year was quite painful. I think I had sort of blown quads from halfway. Last year was a lot better. I had stronger legs, but I probably had that fatigue, and I had that key race not long afterwards. So I took it quite sort of cautiously. But this year I had. The previous year I think I had 3 things working against me. This year they're all gone, and I had my best training block yet, and the weather was classic British weather, so that was great. Lots of drizzle and wet fog. Perfect.
Oh, and you were ready for that.
Yes, that was
a
exactly
lifetime.
I also had Nicky Spinks crewing for me, which was you can't ask for someone better on your side than her.
She knows her way around a hill.
Yeah.
You could say.
Does. And yeah, it went quite well. I came 12th. I wanted to come 10th, and I was 10th for a little bit, so I'm quite frustrated that I didn't hold on to that. But and I was also the first British finisher, which was pleasing, and the first old git, which meant I got to stand on the podium, which was nice. And so yeah, fairly pleased. Not fully satisfied, but fairly pleased. It may mean I have to go back again.
I was just about to ask if you're feeling not satisfied, is there a fourth UTMB?
But I think you also had the field to compete with this year. You know, there were some absolute belting runners, you could say.
Yes,
you could say some good quality runners turned up to race that race this year. You know, so much so that you could probably say that the first 4 or 5 places were pretty much picked out. Before the race started, you know, the most stacked field in UTMB history, they said, right?
Yeah, I mean, I went one further and said it was the strongest lineup ever assembled for a trail ultra marathon. But while the weather helped me, I think, because I do a lot of my training in, say, the Brecon Beacons, and it was almost exactly like that for most of my training, and I don't necessarily, like most Brits, don't necessarily love it when it gets hot. But usually there are more DNFs at the front end. And in fact, first sort of 12 favourites, none of them DNF'd, which was a bit annoying, really. 2 or 3 of them, you know, I'm not saying that some of them are soft or anything, but usually 2 or 3 of them cop out near the end, and I was sort of counting on that, thinking I'd still sneak into the top 10, but it didn't really happen.
Yeah, but I think when you've got people like the likes of, you know, Killian and Jim Walmsley and stuff like that in there, well, saying that Jim Walmsley, you never know how he's going to do, but you could always rely on maybe 1 or 2 in the top end. But if that was any other year, you would have had your top 10, no doubt. I imagine you would have been closing in on top 5 if the field wasn't as strong, because you normally have one or 2 of those top 6 duking it out, and you don't normally have all of them. So maybe you know, if you have the similar or even better performance next year, if you do it again, then well, who knows what can happen. I'm not putting any pressure on you, Damian, but if you don't get a podium, at least,
then there may never be another podcast.
You're not coming back on here unless you get a podcast. So whatever glory you want to take from the UTMB, this will obviously be the pinnacle. You can say at the finish line that, yes, I can come back for Series 3.
I can't ask for a bigger motivation than to hear my new theme tune.
Blaring out over the speakers. But surely all of that experience with the spine would have helped with that bad weather as well. You know, the spine's well known for being an absolute, you know, gnarly race. Especially they pick the best time of year to do it, don't they?
Yeah, I do think, having done the spine, partly because I'm a journalist as well, and most of these races end up as sort of stories in magazines. So that's partly why I jumped up so quickly, in that once you've done a 50k, a 100k, even a 100 miler, the editor sort of knows you can possibly do that distance again. So the story isn't so good unless you're out of your comfort zone, to use that cliche. Or doing some, they want a sense of jeopardy in the story. Can you cover the distance? So without really knowing it, I was already doing the spine race when I was woefully inexperienced for it. That's still been my toughest. My first spine race is easily my toughest experience. But I think it really bolsters you for things ahead, because you think, well, this is tough, but was it as tough as that first spine race? No, it wasn't that tough. So you haven't really got a reason not to see it through, really. And on that first race, I mean, we say everything hurt. I mean, yeah, everything hurt. But I'd not experienced, sleep deprivation before. I had these wild hallucinations towards the end. I thought someone was setting off nice, giant Chinese lanterns for me, showing me the way to the finish line. And of course, they were showing me they didn't exist, and they were showing me the way, the opposite way to the finishing line. So I was getting.
They could have at least been courteous and put them in the right direction.
That's hallucinations.
Yeah. They felt incredibly real at the time. I remember asking people at the end of the race, "Hey, do you remember those lanterns?" They were like, "No." That was quite a surreal experience overall, but really helpful to do an event that difficult early on. Get through it. But also, what I realised is I was more of I did a lot of long distance hiking. I used to love walking. I'd already walked the Pennine Way. I loved doing the long distance trails. I used to, and I realised a lot of those skills, even though I didn't know they were skills, were really helpful for ultra running. So I had the, some of it's just simple, just eating and putting your jacket on when it rains and stuff. But that sort of stuff was actually quite helpful, and maybe some strength from hiking up hills and not minding too much when you got chased in the bathing suit area. That sort of stuff's been quite helpful.
Well, yeah, I think we'll definitely have a conversation with you, because that's a hope for me with the spine over the next couple of years. So I'll definitely be grabbing you on that. We could probably even do a whole podcast episode on how to prepare for that race. I mean, bearing in mind you've got to finish at least third at the UTMB to come back on. But if you do, maybe we'll talk about that, and maybe talk about how you can podium at UTMB, because that's quite another big race.
That's quite big.
Quite a big achievement. But yeah, we could definitely talk about that. But where did you train for the UTMB? You say the Brecon Beacons. How do you kind of structure your blocks to train for something like that? How much time do you give yourself? What does a typical week look like for you?
Well, I don't know if I'm giving the impression I'm just sort of some amateur who's winging it, but I am very lucky. At the moment, I'm coached by Ian Sharman, and he's there aren't really any runners with a better sort of 100-mile pedigree than him, and so he advised me last year and this year, but he doesn't really go on about huge mileage. Like, he doesn't want me to do 100-mile weeks. It's much more in the sort of 70, 80, maybe 90-mile weeks. But leading up to UTMB, you've got to really think about how much climb you're getting in. That's probably more important than the miles. So I live just outside Bath, and I would go to the Brecon Beacons at least once a week, sort of 3-hour round trip, and try and get. Well, he thought I shouldn't quite get 10,000 foot into a run, because that sort of makes your legs sore enough that your next few sessions won't be so good. But maybe around 8,000 foot of climb into a long run there, and to do that regularly. And then I'd go and I'd copy Jez Bragg and go and do reps of Snowdon.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's almost exactly 1,000 metres on most of the paths, or at least definitely the Lamberis path. And that's what UTMB is really, is sort of sort of 10 Snowdons.
Wow.
So to get the 1,000 metre descent especially, and the climb up. So last year I did 4 reps of it in a day, but I did get a little niggle from that. So this year I just did 3. I also did the Lavaredo Ultra Trail, which is a nice, almost a mini UTMB. It's 75 miles, I think, and it's about 10 weeks before, so you're just about safe doing it. I can't remember the climb, 5,000 or 6,000 metres. So it's like a mini UTMB. So that, Snowdon, and getting to Brecon Beacons regularly, they were my sort of key sessions. But Ian has another couple of tricks. One is you sort of slap on a weight vest and go hiking, but not for long. I'd do my run in the morning, and then in the evening after dinner, when the kids were in bed, I'd go and hike for just 1 or 2 miles with a weight vest, maybe 8 kilograms, just up and down a little hill a couple of times, and you don't even feel it in your legs, but that's just helping recovery, but also just gradually building strength in a really safe way. And that's another good little tip. But yeah, strength work as well. Since I've been working with Ian, squats and lunges, quite regularly. So that sort of stuff really.
So it's been a multi-pronged approach really, which is always great to see. I think quite a lot of people, and this is what it's interesting, because you always look at kind of how runners train for this. So I was kind of looking at a couple of your Strava runs prior to the UTMB, because I was speaking to Shane Benzie, who I believe you know.
Yeah, and I should credit him as well. Sorry, Shane.
I don't apologise.
Don't apologise to Shane.
And I much enjoyed the podcast when he was on. I've been working with him sort of maybe 3 years, correcting my horrendous technique, and especially this year we worked on my downhills, because I still was getting caught by these nippy European mountain goats, working on downhill technique to try and get better at that, obviously, and it does seem to be slowly working. He's very patient, this Shane.
Yeah, he is very good.
We're not usually nice about him, but we'd be willing to agree with you on that.
We'll say he's nice now, because he's probably too busy training someone to listen to us now. He's too
he's
big
not paying
time.
attention to us anymore.
He's got that device. What is it that he plays with?
Oh, his little tensegrity device.
Yeah, he's probably doing that in front of a room of 500 people now as we speak. So he loves that, and his little stretchy things. Bless him.
We liked Shane Benzie before he was mainstream.
Yeah. So so it's good, and I think that a lot of runners will look at like a kind of one-dimensional approach, and it tends to be the guys that just go for the volume and the huge mileage that tend to end up falling flat on their face after time. So it's good to see that you're looking at your strength training, you're looking at the way that you run, you're really, really thinking about how you structure your week, and it's not all about the miles, which is good, because we covered that a lot in Series 1, is overtraining and people doing too many miles.
Yeah, absolutely, we did, the Al Ruddock one. Also, I like that weight vest business. We're going to put Ian out of business if we get too much away that way.
Yeah, well, I think it's that active recovery, isn't it? It's just making sure that, well, you did the same. You did the same with your runs and then followed up by your walks and stuff. So, yeah, it is really cool. But what's next for you, Damian? What's next on the card? You got anything lined up for next year?
You were saying about, there has to be a sense of jeopardy in whatever you're doing next, and you've already podiumed at the Dragon's Back and the Spine and smashed the UTMB. So is there a bigger one in the pipeline? Is there something else?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I do think less now about making magazine stories and more sort of about thinking of myself as a runner and trying to pick races I just am excited about. Let the journalism be sort of secondary. But for the first time in about 4 years, I haven't got any races in the calendar. It was partly because I wanted to have nothing after UTMB so that I could just go and smash myself up and not be concerned about it for afterwards. So I'm still I do really fancy Tour de Gion, but it's like a week after UTMB, so I'm just trying to,
that'd be a big fortnight.
I'm going to a race and you can't I don't know, you're sort of still emotionally doing that race for several weeks afterwards. I'm still at UTMB at the moment, so I can't let go of it yet. So I'm trying to wait till I'm more in a more rational mind and decide whether I want to do it again next year, because there are a lot of other good races. But to answer your question more succinctly, I don't have any plans at the moment.
Okay. It's a nice position to be in.
Yeah. Just have to see, really.
See where you end up.
What has, you described, after the Spine, the UTMB was your next obsession. What is it that makes it such a special race for you? Why is it that you want to go back there over and over again?
I thought about this a lot, actually. I think it comes down to three things primarily, and that's, the course is obviously spectacular. It's a popular hiking route, as you well know, I'm sure. So it's already I love running through the night, especially in the mountains. And there are wilder, more technical routes, of course, but what I also the crowds, I don't mind a huge crowd clapping me, that's okay. And they're just incredibly generous. So even this year, with terrible weather, they're all the way through the night. There were people right up in the mountains, just up there to say, bravo and bon courage. I only got grade E for GCSE French, so I don't know what they're saying, but I presume it's encouraging.
I think they were slagging you off, Damian. You should head back out there.
I better get back there and have a word then.
You wait till next year when they're singing your anthem.
So I love those two aspects, and also the fact it is the most competitive lineup each year is exciting. I know I'm not as good as those guys, but I'm just fascinated by how close can I get to them. And so it's those three things. Almost, you'd almost call it the crowd, the course, and the competition. The three C's, or CCC, ironically enough. So that, and I know it's not always that popular with all British runners. Some people turn their nose up at it, which is fine. And there's always a few political things with UTMB that not everyone loves. And what's great is you can come back to Britain and do a race where you finish and there's just one man and his dog in a field looking the other way, and you can do both those things. You can have the huge crowds and the hard, well-marked course, or you can have different adventures here. But I just love it, and I don't know if have you ever been out there for the week in Chamonix?
Yeah, I was there 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had a stall at the trade fair, and then I stayed out to watch the UTMB start and finish. So yeah, it's a spectacular place.
And just there's just wonderful atmosphere all week, isn't it? And one guy who was there for the first time, a friend of mine, Brendan, he sort of said, well, it's like trail runners heaven here, and which seemed, quite on the ball. So it's hard to give it up. It's hard not to be there. I've got a friend, Kirsty Reed, who goes out there, I think 7 years in a row. And this year was her first year without going out there, and I know she found it hard. So sort of once it's quite addictive. Yeah.
Well, let's see if we get.
Don't look at me.
What?
Don't plant that seed.
Okay, I'm not going to do it publicly.
I'm
going.
Yeah, all right, fine.
This is how it starts, Damian. This podcast is just a precursor to stuff that
you making me do
doing. So we talk about all the good times you've had. I'm actually quite interested in the bad times. So yeah, I'm going to bring these up because these are important, and you've probably learnt more lessons from those bad times, I suppose. So let's talk about times where things haven't gone to plan and what particular races they were and why.
Well, I suppose my worst race to date is probably still the Trail World Championships last year in Portugal, representing Great Britain. I mean, I finished it, but I was I think 60th something place or 80th overall something. I just got really, really debilitating cramps and could hardly walk at some points. And I think it was partly my legs were just tired from a long year, and partly, cramp is still very much open to debate, and whether it's a salt thing or whether it's a muscle thing. And my feeling from that experience was that it was a bit of both, because it started to get a lot hotter. It was a lot hotter than we'd been told it would be. I got dehydrated not long ago, and I'd started racing a bit faster, all in one go. So it's just. And when you're racing for Great Britain, you're part of a team, and the most important thing was the team score. And there were 6 of us to start with, and only the first 3 count. And even when there were still 4 of us left in the race, I was the 4th, and I thought, well, I'm having a nightmare, but at least my bad result won't count for much. And then another guy dropped out. So suddenly where I was really mattered. And GB had been, I think, 4th or maybe even 3rd the previous time, and this time we came in 11th. So my miserable showing had really affected the overall result. So, it bothered me a lot, and it bothered me during the race. And obviously when you get into a negative sort of mindset, it doesn't necessarily help. So that was disappointing, and made me want to, hopefully get back in the team next year and do better. I guess another race where I learned an early lesson was, it was only about my 5th or 6th ultramarathon, and it was after I'd done the spine for the first time. And like I say about doing the spine, it does make you feel like you can sort of do anything. So I jumped into the Lakeland 50, which that year was the GB, was it the National Championships, I think? So, of course, there are loads of really fast runners, and I was quite new to the sport. And I'd just done, 268-mile race, and I thought that would make me good at a 50-mile race. Then turns out 50-mile races are much faster. Who knew? So I flew up, and I'm going to blame my second child, my son, for being born not long before. It's entirely his fault. I didn't, I'd undertrained, and I just thought I'd be good because I'd done the spine. So I set off with the front group and blew up on about 4 miles, quite pathetically, and watched. I think I still came in the top 20 just about, but I had to watch a lot of people crawl, speed past me and feel a bit sheepish. And that was another race that sort of taught me a lot of lessons about, and it was quite a hot day, so I hadn't done anything to think about the environment I was in. I hadn't trained well enough, and then my expectations were totally unrealistic of what I could do. But then that really put me on a learning curve. It was good to do that early on, because 2 years later, when next time there was a national championship, and it was also the trial for the team. It was the Highland Fling in 2016. And by this time, I was a lot more experienced, a lot better trained. I had a really good coach in Ian Sharman. And this time I came second, and that's what qualified me for the GB team. So I learnt a lot of lessons early on, which ultimately led me to getting a GB vest. You're right. It's good to fall flat on your face early on.
You're looking like you're... No.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm waiting. I thought you was taking a big deep breath to ask a question then.
I did warn you I was pretty boring.
No. We both looked at each other because we both thought the other was about to ask a follow-up.
So that's why.
Sorry.
We just looked at each other because we both took a big deep breath in, and then I just figured it was him asking a question.
Damn, we're professional. When something like that happens, then Damian, I'm going to talk to Damian now. When something like that happens, and I'm sort of mainly thinking about your experience last year. What's the thought process afterwards? Are you someone who beats yourself up a lot about something like that, or are you somebody who can dust yourself off and just look for the positives and crack on? What's that process like for you? I don't think it's something that people talk about an awful lot. Is how you deal with the bounce back ability.
Bounce back ability,
or how you deal with the bad races, because everyone's going to have the bad races.
Well, yeah, I've done the spine twice, and then I've worked on it as well last year, and I think I'm working on it again next year, doing the media for them. And there's a really interesting character there. I'm gonna forget her name as soon as I try and say it, but they have a psychologist on the race permanently, and it is mostly to deal with people DNFing and being overwhelmed, feeling like all these different emotions and getting quite upset about DNFing, when obviously the spine is a very tough race, and there's very little shame in not getting to the end of it, because usually over half the people won't get to the end of it. And she told me most DNFs come from the person overestimates themselves and underestimates the challenge, and that the key mindset during the spine and probably most ultra marathons is that adaptability, is that's not going right, but what can you do about it? How will you change your thinking or change your plan? So those are really interesting things. I think that she said to me, and she does. I've seen a lot of people, especially that first year I did it. They were just men crying. The second checkpoint at Hawes, spelled HAWES, incidentally, is like last time. The first time I did it, it was just like almost like a first world refugee centre, was just blokes crying everywhere. Like the weather had been horrendous, and they were just really tough guys sitting there with their heads in their hands, crying. I wasn't far off. Admittedly, I'm not meaning to mock any of them. I was pretty close, and I can't remember where I was going with all this. But your emotions, especially if you haven't slept, your emotions go everywhere, don't they, during these long races? So what was it? Back to me and my miserable failure. I don't know if I did. I was trying to get off that subject.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, I was rooming with on the way back with Kim Collison, and he's represented Great Britain I think 3 times, and he was pretty circumspect about it. He had DNF'd there, and he said, well, it's only a race. There'll be another race. And I guess that smacked me out of it a bit, and you've got to stop feeling sorry for yourself and think you're so much luckier than most people. You've got to represent your country. You got a nice new suitcase out of it. And lots of people can't run. There's always thousands, if not millions, of people worse off than you. So that just getting that sense of perspective, I think, and just feeling lucky you can run and do some of the things you want to with your life, I suppose. If verging on hippie cliches, but I guess you just got to get that sense of perspective back, I think.
Yeah, and so often these cliches exist for a reason. It does make sense. You're right. It's incredible that you were there in the first place. That's going to be something important to focus on.
And every runner DNFs. There's not a successful runner that hasn't DNF'd at some point. Even your Killian Jornet. I mean, to be fair, his DNF was on Everest. He DNF'd Everest for the first time, and then he went and did it twice to make up for it. But he still DNF'd technically.
Yeah, let's focus on that.
Give him a wacky theme tune.
I'll have to.
You know what, Damian? When he agrees to come on the podcast, we'll give him a wacky theme tune.
I'm sure he will when Damian beats him next year.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your kind of best distance then? Because obviously you've kind of come to, from what we've found out so far, the longer seems to be the better for you. But the 100 mile at the UTMB, it's 100 mile, isn't it?
Yeah, 105.5, strictly speaking, yeah.
Yeah, so that's, in terms of like what ultras are out there, like when you put that on a scale with like the Spine and the Tour de France and stuff like that, it's kind of like a middle distance ultra, which is crazy when you think about it, isn't it? Do you think like the Spines and the Tour de France, which go up into the 200, 300s, would be more your thing? Or do you think like 100 mile is kind of like a decent distance for you?
I do love 100 miles. I've only actually done 6, and 3 of them have been UTMB. But I love what Anne Trayson said, which was like, when you run 100 miles, you live a year in one day. If we're back in sort of hippie cliche territory, but I love that idea of that big, emotional journey. Now with stuff like the Spine, I mean, early on when I was running and doing these events, it was the most extreme events, the most brutal events that were the most exciting to me. But once I'd done some of them, I've become more excited about being competitive, I suppose, in probably 100 miles and maybe a tiny bit less. But I don't have the natural speed of some of these runners. So definitely the below 50 miles is probably, I'm not going to be very competitive at that. So it is probably, I'm going to, next year it'll be, I'll pick ideally probably 200 milers and 1 or 2 others that are probably slightly less than 100. So I love those races. Tour de Géant, I definitely want to do it. I'll definitely do it. I love that whole adventure you go on, really, a multi-day adventure. But they are absolutely exhausting. I know I'm stating the obvious, but when I did the Spine the second time, I couldn't run for like 7 weeks afterwards because of sort of tendon damage. That doesn't have to happen to you. I don't want to put you off. That was me trying to race it on minimal training, and getting the sticky mud. Just my feet repetitively being pulled out of sticky mud. So I did some tendon damage. So when you do the big one, the really big ones like Tour de Géant, I mean, you've got to factor in at least 3 months of good training before, and then it could be 2 or 3 months recovering from it. So that's half your year. So I don't know how many of those I want to do. And then last year I did that sort of 10-day FKT as well, which did affect me for the rest of the year. So I think for the time being, while I've got a little bit of comparative speed, it is the 100 mile and around that distance I'm more excited about. And then maybe when I lose my edge a bit, which is probably imminent, maybe I'll do some of the longer stuff again. But yeah, I mean, it's all good. It's all exciting.
I love that as an idea. When I've started to go off the boil a little bit, I'll just start going a lot further.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel like I'm not at my peak, so I'm just going to slam on another 150 miles to my
no
race.
problem.
People watching on this community, they must think that it's just full of nutters, which it is.
But it does fascinate me. It is. I think ultra running is fairly unique in that there's an awful lot out there for older runners to achieve, because you start using your brain more to an extent. You start relying on your experience. It becomes about stamina and the ability to endure.
Personal admin.
All about admin.
Especially on the Spine, right? The Spine's all about your personal admin. You get that wrong, you're going to, no matter how fast you are, you're going to end up falling short. I imagine the UTMB was the same this year with the cold weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely the Spine's huge for it. Just making sure you're fueled, making sure you've got the right map, looking after your feet. They sound, there's the sort of things that before the race they sound really obvious to remember, and then when you're in there and you haven't slept for 2 days and you're covered from head to foot in mud and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's people don't remember it. And on the Spine, one little tip is you do yourself like a checklist, laminated checklist. Of literally like change your batteries, change your maps for the 5 main checkpoints you get to. Get more food. You've got to have a list of really simple things to remember, because you get a bit mind warped, and that personal admin's a huge thing. And
when you did the Spine, did they have the Challenger then, or was it just the Spine? Because the Challenger's relatively new, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the first time I did it. It gets called the Fun Run.
The Fun Run, yeah.
The Fun Run.
But actually, I mean, it's probably Britain's, it's probably our toughest 100 miler. Probably only the Arc of Attrition competes with it for our 100. For our toughest 100 miler. It's got a lot of, it gets you a lot of ITRA points, I believe. Someone online did a comparison of the UK 100 milers, and it's a cracking race for anyone who wants to come and do it.
Well, I think you're saying that because I've already got my registration in for the Challenger.
Yeah, it's looking entirely likely that we're both going to be there.
For this January?
Yeah. So, Will's on the edge side, but my intention is to do the full spine, but I kind of wanted to have a crack at the Challenger first because it'll be my first official 100 miler. So I've done a couple in training, but never raced at them. So yeah, I'm going to have a crack at that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you'll probably get another phone call over the next couple of weeks or something like that.
Sorry, go on.
No, you go.
We need all the advice we can get.
Last year they employed me to do their media, and I think we're doing that again, and I'll be doing some social media as we go. So I can take lots of photos of you as you go along, and we can show the world how heroic or otherwise you look for the whole distance.
Yeah, it's going to be great when you see
thanks,
me.
Damian. That's much appreciated. If you could try to catch me when it's raining or something like that, just so it's less obvious that I'm crying, that'd be absolutely great.
I've got another idea as well. I was thinking if I come up with maybe like a wacky theme tune.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Every time I see you, I could play it.
That'd be great, yeah. I think when we're exhausted and we've been going for 24 hours and stuff like that, it'd be
£1.32, Chris. Was it worth it? Look what you've done.
Hey, I'll have that on repeat. I'd be glad for some music.
I want the Thug Life one.
The Thug Life. Okay. But yeah, no, it's something that we hang around with Stu Westfield too much, so it was only a matter of time before we was going to do it.
There was a grim inevitability living this close to Edale that I'd seen that start of the Pennine Way sign so many times.
When Will was training for the Ice Ultra, he went out to Edale, and he happened to be staying there when the spine was starting.
I did it by accident. Yeah. I just booked into the youth hostel the night before the spine. Everyone thought I was racing it, and I felt like a fraud the next morning when I left the hostel at like 6 a.m. with my head torch on. 3 people pulled up to me on the road on the way down to Edale to offer me a lift. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm just going home.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So we've kind of had a lot of practical advice on some advanced races. So, like the Spine and the UTMB. These are the kind of races that people will start to pick as they've done a few ultras, I should think. No one kind of just rushes where you can't rush in and go straight to something like that. They won't let you. But what would you say were the most valuable lessons you learned as you were kind of, finding your feet, so to speak? For people that are just starting to maybe go, because we have a lot of listeners that might be training for their first ultra marathon, or they might be just kind of starting their own running journey themselves. What would your advice be to them?
I think the very first one I was told, which maybe is really obvious to your listeners, but is to run off road as much as possible. And this is, to some people that's really easy, to some people it isn't. But your body gets so much more benefit and is a lot less likely to get injured, running on trails and grass and hills than on tarmac, which is probably the worst surface to be running on. Admittedly, occasionally I'll still do a road race, only once or twice a year and with gritted teeth, just to try and keep my speed up a bit. But generally speaking, stay off that horrible stuff, get to the hills. And that would probably be my second bit of advice. I definitely made some improvements when I started to think more about, not necessarily measuring it, but more about thinking about how much climb you're doing each week. And by climb, I just mean uphill running or hiking. Like if it gets steep, if you can be good at hiking at an efficient, power hiking with or without poles, that's still a really good sort of skill. It sounds weird to count it as a skill, but that's really useful. Even in my first 100 miler on the Cotswold Way Century, I remember running with a guy who was a much better runner than me. But every time I got to a big hill, without even trying, I would put a gap on him. simply because he wasn't a hiker and I just had this background hiking. So you can develop basically, a bigger, stronger backside, a Kardashian profile, and that can be a huge benefit. And then running downhill as well has more risks, as Shane Benzie would tell everyone, damage limitation, but you are really strengthening your quads. So you don't go hammering down steep hills straight away, but if you gradually, incorporate that in your training as well, you're going to be building some good strength in your legs. And these last couple of years have been my best, and they're where I've got stronger legs, run up and down more hills. So often with a training run now, an average day run might be sort of between 5 and 7 miles. But I'm thinking less about that and thinking I've got to get at least 100 foot of climbing. And to some people that'll be really difficult. To some people that's really easy. Like I always envy, people who live in the lakes, and that's just their warm up hill, isn't it? But whatever is around you. But thinking more about getting that, and that's developing your muscles. And I think they would probably be my key tips. And then I think thirdly, if I haven't talked too much already, what I probably did do early on was I did almost bite off more than I could chew, like signing up for a spine a bit early. And there is a logical, like especially with the spine, people often they'll go and volunteer for a year, and then they might go and sign up for the fun run, and then they might do the spine the third year, and that's really logical and makes a lot of good sense to do it that way. But also, I wouldn't discourage people from doing it the other way and just signing up for something that scares you, because when it scares you, it becomes all consuming, and I think you really invest in it because you're frightened, so you really think about it all the time, and you think about the kit and the training, and you really commit to it then. And I've done that a few times, and for me it's worked. So yeah, that'd be my three tips initially, I think.
They're very good tips. Very good. On point 2, I've moved from Sheffield to like North Leeds, kind of like skirting on Bradford, and noticed that like in Sheffield I was spoiled for choice. Like me and Will can both just literally walk out of our house and we've got hills in every which direction. You can't move
avoid
them. Yeah. Where in Leeds I'm kind of at the bottom of a flat valley, and it's a way to get out to some hills, and even then they're not really a hill. And it's a noticeable difference. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I haven't got hills accessible to me, and I realised how spoiled I was by not having to travel. So, like obviously, like with you going to the Brecons, that's a 3-hour round trip. The last thing you kind of want to do is an hour and a half drive there and back when you've just done 4 reps of Snowdon. You know what I mean? It's a crazy thought, but if people can like what I'm doing now is like booking weekends or booking just 2 or 3 days where I'm going away with the missus and walking and hiking up hills. It just has a huge benefit, even if you're just kind of spending that time hiking up and down and doing that.
I think when you're first getting into ultra running as well, it almost seems counterintuitive at first, because you feel like, well, I'm supposed to be running.
People run too much.
If I'm not running, then I'm not training properly. Actually, slow down, get the climbs in, worry about how long you're on your feet rather than how fast you're moving.
So that were really 3 really good tips there. I'm sure people.
And I definitely agree. Yeah, the hiking, that probably would have been my next tip. Is just hiking's brilliant. But also for people like you, maybe who have more limited access to hills. I mean, the weight vest hiking is a decent little way, a decent little shortcut, even if you're not hiking up and down hills. And hopefully you can find maybe a few steps or something around.
Yeah, I've got hills. I just have to do reps of the same one, which I have to grit my teeth and get really mardy about, because I'm a snobby runner now that's used to the beautiful trails of Sheffield. But yeah, no, that's you find a way, don't you? You find a way wherever you are. But I'm thinking of people that might live in Norwich, where I think there's only one hill and it's about 10 foot tall.
Spent a couple of months in Leicester over the summer, and there's just nothing. There's just nothing to climb up.
So, might have to just travel out a little while to do that, but it can be done. Well, is there any other questions that you have? I mean, I have plenty of questions on the spine that I'm probably going to call you at another time.
Yeah, there's a lot I want to ask about that, but I'm really worried we're turning this podcast into sort of a personal free training session from Damian Hall.
Are you? Have you got any kind of speaking gigs lined up over the next couple of weeks? Are you kind of?
Feel free to plug.
Yeah, this is plug time now. We've got speaking gigs lined up.
Well, if I'm allowed to plug stuff, briefly, I'm very lucky to be working with Innovate, and they've been very helpful to me lately, especially at UTMB. They've got some great new clothing range out, and I'm lucky. Contours Trail Running Holidays are helpful to me as well, and that they're worth looking into for people who want a sort of running holiday that could be great training, especially for a multi-day race or just getting you fit early in the year. As for speaking things, I'm doing a TED talk
good boy.
in Aberystwyth in October. Hold on. October the 21st, I think. And then next year, what's the date? Well, there's a UTMB seminar that X Energy organise, which is really good. They get me. Well, it's good other than that. They get Nikki Spinks. I think Anna Marie Watson, who came 7th lady this time at UTMB, will be there. That's on the 3rd. It looks like it's the 3rd of March on the edge of London, somewhere, Buckinghamshire. If you go on the X Energy website, that'll be advertised. We did that this year for the first time. And I believe we got I think it was 95% of people who went along, completed the races out at UTMB, whether it's TDS, CCC.
Nice. That's very cool.
And it was I learned a lot from the other guys as well. It was just a 1-day workshop where we just, that was pretty good. So they're two of my main ones. I'm also doing a workshop with Mountain Run have I plugged enough yet?
No, you can do one. Go on.
With my good friend Charlie Sprosen, who runs Mountain Run in the Lakes, and we're doing a sort of ultra training workshop. When's that? It looks like that's 9th, 10th, 11th of March up in the Lake District. So if you look on the Mountain Run website, there'll be more details of that. So that was really good last year. And we had Paul Tierney came along, who's won the Lakeland 100, and he's got a really interesting way of sort of technique. It was similar to Shane Benzie, and we had a really good group of people there for that. So I'm doing a few things like that, and I'm sure I've probably plugged enough stuff. But thank you for the opportunity.
No worries,
not a problem. So if you've been listening to this and you like what Damian's saying, which I'm sure you will, he's a busy lad, and even though he's not got a race on the horizon, he's going to be dotted around the country doing talks, sharing his wisdom, and you guys can get it from him in person rather than through a podcast. Also check out his website as well, because he's got some great books that he's written in the past, some great articles for some very cool people. So he's always busy and writing. We wish you the best of luck in any kind of race that is coming up and any training. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we bump into each other and meet each other in person.
Well, I'm going to see you guys in January.
Okay. Yes, you will.
Of course. We may not remember that. Who knows what you'll look like when I'm tripping my nuts off up in the hills.
Definitely. It'll be a good laugh. And thanks a lot for coming on, Damian. And I don't know who we got for episode 2. Possibly Robbie.
It might be Robbie.
Got Robbie back
for
series 2, where you can guarantee there'll be swear words and flatulence.
I'm sorry if I let you down on the flatulence.
It's okay, Damian.
Robbie fills our season's quota. Now, the main question is, we're going to have our motivational music that keys us out. Are you wanting your theme tune to kind of play you out of this?
Definitely, please.
Okay, let me just... We might as well... Basically, £1.32 is already starting to make its money. The thing that he's furious about, Damian, is we got offered sponsorship for this series of the podcast, and I said no to it through... They wanted us to be people we weren't. They wanted to do some cheesy message at the beginning, and it wasn't really us. And it kind of, because of that, we didn't get the mics and the soundproofing stuff that Will desperately needs.
Yeah, I'm fine about that.
But as you listen to Damian's theme tune now, I want you to think about those mics and stuff.
I'm going to be really glad that we're keeping it real.
So that's it for this episode of the Everything Insurance Podcast with Damian Hall.
I hate you so hard.
And we hope you all have a good week. Goodbye.